The world watched President Bush evade the attack in Iraq when shoes flew at him. They failed to witness Dana Perino being struck down by a steel microphone, though. With a black eye that became Washington's greatest irony, she sobbed as she exited the room. But it wasn't the most bizarre thing that had ever happened to her. Her pet gained greater notoriety because her husband was previously imprisoned for their dog, more so than the former press secretary for the White House. Even Dana's biggest fans would be shocked to learn the truth about her hidden troubles. Dana Perino made a daring pledge while on a family vacation outside the White House when she was only 6 years old. She promised her parents that she would eventually work there. This was no ordinary dream from childhood. She meant it. That event was never forgotten by her parents. Dana Perino fulfilled that pledge over 25 years later. Her job was not limited to the White House. She was the first Republican woman to hold the position and became the 26th White House press secretary. The odds were slim for a rural Wyoming teenager with no political ties, but Dana's will was strong. Dana was born in Evanston, Wyoming, on May 9, 1972. At the time, the town's population was little over 10,000. Her family relocated to Parker, Colorado when she was 2 years old. They were looking for better chances. Back then, Parker was a peaceful, middle-class neighborhood. Dana was raised with the virtues of diligence and tenacity. Her ancestry was a blend of Italian customs and the tough American attitude. Her perseverance and feeling of community were brought by her great-grandparents, who had immigrated from Italy. Dana's character was shaped by her upbringing. She learned kindness, loyalty, and independence from it, traits that subsequently aided her in challenging political environments. Dana used to go to her grandfather's ranch in Newcastle, Wyoming, every summer. Ranch life wasn't a holiday. At 4 a.m., Dana woke up to assist in moving livestock. Although the labor was harsh, cold, and uncertain, she learned something invaluable from it. Ranchers needed to have hope. They survived because of it, not because it was a good idea. Dana carried the teachings from those early mornings with her. She gained the ability to confront obstacles head-on, to never give up, and to be optimistic when things didn't go as planned. Years later, she stood tall in the press conference room thanks to these same attributes. Dana used to be a gymnast before taking up politics. She spent hours every day training. The sport required self-control, equilibrium, and composure under duress. She had to provide a flawless performance in front of everyone. There was no textbook that could provide this level of preparation. Gymnastics gave her the focus and self-assurance she needed to face stressful situations at the White House. She maintained her composure in the face of difficult questioning and national crises. Dana found her passion for communication at Parker's Ponderosa High School. She participated in debating clubs and contests. She developed her ability to articulate herself clearly, persuade others, and construct arguments. Her teachers urged her to aspire high after noticing her talent. Dana knew she wanted to work in the media by the time she graduated. As well as politics, she would eventually reach that White House podium thanks to the route she took. Dana managed a rigorous schedule while attending college. She was employed at 2 a.m. until 6 in the morning. Work as a country music DJ at Colorado Springs KCCY FM 96.9. She kept the station going during the lonely night while other students slept. She had to remain alert, accept requests for songs, and ensure that the radio never fell silent. She frequently headed straight to class or debate practice when her shift ended. She also had to play Achy Breaky Heart by Billy Ray Cyrus at the top of every hour. In her 4-hour slot, that equated to 12 times per shift, or more than 48 times per week. Although exhausting, it helped her develop her patience and fortitude. Dana received her degree from Colorado State University in Pueblo in 1994. She graduated with a mass communications degree with Spanish and political science minors. On the debate team, she was particularly noticeable. She learned to think quickly and talk powerfully while competing throughout the nation. Her success in the future was made possible by these abilities. Dana took up significant challenges even when she was a student. She covered Colorado politics as the host of Capital Journal on KTSC TV. She was the producer of the show Standoff, which addressed contentious public issues. These jobs weren't simple. They need calm nerves, fast decision-making, and keen thinking. She had experience managing live broadcasts, challenging guests, and technical issues. Exactly the kind of strain she would eventually encounter in Washington. Dana didn't slow down after graduating from college. At the University of Illinois, Springfield, she worked for a master's degree in public affairs reporting. She covered the Illinois Capitol while working as a reporter for WCAA-TV. She completed strict deadlines every day, followed up with lawmakers, and reported on complicated topics. She gained a profound awareness of politics and the media as a result of the challenging experience. Power and reputation weren't the first things that drew Dana Perino into politics. She found work as a staff assistant for Congressman Scott McInnes in Washington, D.C. In the mid-1990s, but the position was not glamorous. Dana's days were devoted to scheduling meetings, processing mail, and taking phone calls. She soon realized how difficult life in politics might be. A person's career could be lost for even minor errors. The compensation was low, and the hours were long, typically 12 hours a day. Dana, however, picked things up quickly. Most important were discretion and loyalty. A single thoughtless word might ruin a campaign or terminate a career. She learned how to survive during these formative years in a society where office politics and inflated egos were prevalent. She also had the opportunity to observe the writing of bills, and agreements were reached. For the majority of political science students, it was the kind of practical instruction they could only imagine. Her opinions on politics were permanently impacted by this difficult and unvarnished experience. After her time with McInnes came to an end, Dana made a significant advancement. Congressman Dan Schaefer, who chaired the House Commerce Subcommittee on Energy and Power, hired her as his press secretary. This was no ordinary task. Some of the most contentious topics of the day were discussed by Schaefer's committee: energy policy, the environment, and deregulation. All of a sudden, Dana had to deal with remarks that had the power to alter public opinion or markets. She had to make difficult subjects like renewable energy and nuclear safety understandable to all, in minutes at times. Energy policy was tense in the late 1990s. California experiences blackouts. There was intense controversy over the Kyoto Protocol. In the center of it all was Dana. She assisted Schaefer in getting ready for difficult hearings in live television. She had to think quickly because the work was demanding. She mastered the art of saying the perfect thing at the right moment. In 1998, everything was different. Dana had a big decision to make after Schaefer announced his retirement. Her future in Washington seems dubious due to the resignation of her boss. Then she took everyone by surprise. She departed the nation at the age of barely 26. In order to marry Peter McMahon, she relocated to England, a man she met while flying. Nobody had anticipated this. In order to concentrate on her personal life, she left behind a promising job. It was a daring move. At the time, very few young women in politics ventured to quit the game. She learned about balancing and global politics during her year in the UK. She had a new perspective when she returned. She soon returned to working for the government, initially at the Department of Justice and later at the White House. Her destiny was shaped in ways she never could have predicted by that choice she made when she was unsure. Dana Perino took a plane from Denver to Chicago on August 17, 1997. At the age of 25, she concentrated on advancing her political career. Everything changed on that day. She was ambitious and had recently secured a position on Capitol Hill, but destiny had other ideas. The last people to board were Dana and Peter McMahon, a 43-year-old British businessman. 13A and 13C were the only remaining seats. In the end, they sat next to each other. Dana was an American. Peter was an Englishman. Their ages were 18 years apart. Although there was little probability of this meeting, it did occur and it permanently altered their lives. Peter's British accent immediately caught Dana's attention. She noticed that he had no wedding band on. She took notice of that. Peter has already been married twice. England was his home. Dana was a young woman who had just begun her career. The age difference was enormous. It sparked conversation. Dana, however, was unable to deny her emotions. He drew her in. She even prayed to see whether this was the right person for her. Oh, he's 18 years older, resides in England, and has been married twice, she thought repeatedly. How is this possible? However, she was captivated by Peter's tales. He discussed his career, his early years in the Royal Air Force, and all of his travels. He had an eventful life, distinct. They talked for the entire 2.5-hour flight. They seemed to have known one another for a long time. They discussed their dreams, worries, and politics. To their mutual astonishment, they became more open to one another. They sensed something extraordinary had started as the jet touched down. When their families learned of the relationship, they were taken aback. It took Peter 10 days to get in touch with Dana. She began to doubt his interest, but that spark rekindled when he sent her an email. A long-distance relationship started between them. It wasn't simple. They were located in separate time zones and nations. However, they managed to make it work. Dana and Peter were married in 1998, 11 months after they initially met. They kept their family in the dark. Friends weren't invited. In England, they eloped. There were 2 unidentified witnesses. The ceremony was nice and modest. Dana abandoned her job in Washington. She risked everything for love. People were in disbelief. The disparity in age, the mystery surrounding Peter's 2 previous marriages. Everything seemed to happen so quickly. However, Dana said it was the best choice she had ever made, even if it was among the most difficult. In order to begin a new life in a different nation, she left everything she had established behind. Following the wedding, Dana left politics. She first relocated to England before settling in San Diego. She made a fresh start in San Diego. She spent 3 years in high-tech public affairs. She worked at the Porter Novelli Convergence Group, among other places. It was a period of development. She gained new abilities. She had to deal with fresh difficulties. Together with Peter, she created a new life. She was strengthened by the event. For Dana Perino, everything changed after the September 11, 2001 attacks. She watched in disbelief as the jet struck the Pentagon and the World Trade Center, just like millions of Americans. However, it was more than just horror to her. The call was to action. Her residence was outside of Washington, D.C. back then. However, she recovered and assumed a crucial role by November 2001. She joined the Department of Justice as a spokesman. This was more than a job. It put her squarely in the center of America's reaction to the most deadly assault to ever hit its territory. The nation was afraid. History was being shaped by the decisions the government was making. Dana was also present, assisting the public in understanding those choices. She had no desire to further her career when she relocated from Colorado to Washington. It has to do with duty. She felt compelled to assist, like many Americans do. But in such a perilous moment, few would come so close to the true power. Dana had 2 of the most difficult years of her life from 2001 to 2003. She was working at the DOJ at the height of the war on terror, which had just began. It wasn't only information she had to convey. She had to control her perplexity, rage, and dread. The DOJ was making important choices. President Bush issued a military order in November 2001 that permitted the government to detain foreign nationals accused of terrorism without a trial. Even seasoned legal professionals were shocked. Dana had to give the public and media an explanation for these actions. Each word she used was deliberate. Tension was always present in the DOJ press office. Dana maintained her composure, even though one incorrect statement could start a fire. She has a reputation for being able to remain focused in the face of even the most trying circumstances. Dealing with the media following the passage of the USA Patriot Act was one of her most difficult assignments. That was quick. The statute granted the government broad new authority. It may keep an eye on bank records, emails, and phone conversations. With minimal judicial oversight, it may track suspected terrorists. Although many aspects of the act were secret, people were concerned about the implications for their privacy. That further complicated Dana's work. She had to respond to challenging inquiries without giving too much away. She was managing the controversy surrounding Guantanamo Bay and military commissions at the same time. These policies were more than simply abstract concepts. They had an impact on lives. They sparked intense discussion. However, Dana was able to represent the DOJ without escalating public anxiety. Her self-control maintained the message's concentration and clarity. In 2003, Dana Perino started her path to the White House. She began working at the Council on Environmental Quality that year as Associate Director of Communications. Was a tumultuous period in American history. Environmental policy generated heated discussions. Everyone was thinking about public land use, energy independence, and climate change. Both domestically and internationally, the Bush administration's environmental policies were heavily criticized. Dana was in the center of it all because of her job. She was in charge of the body's communication. That made sure the environmental impact of federal acts was examined. This required addressing issues such as opposing the Kyoto Protocol and oil drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Under her supervision, even journalists found their jobs. She didn't think twice about calling editors if she saw something incorrect or harmful. Dana was in the middle of things, and the stakes were high. She wasn't merely restating conversation starters. They were formed by Dana. She contributed to the development of the administration's messaging as the debate over climate change intensified, cited economic harm as the reason the United States withdrew from the Kyoto Protocol. She had to weigh it against the growing concern about global warming, though. She assisted in implementing the 2010 initiative in 2007. The goal was to promote alternative fuels and improved fuel efficiency in order to reduce gasoline consumption by 20% in 10 years. Every single word and sentence had significance. Dana also ensured that the message was understood. She reached farther than that. She soon collaborated with all federal agencies involved in energy, natural resources, and the environment. They spoke with Dana before making any major announcements. She went over their strategies, coordinated their messaging, and maintained uniformity throughout. Her impact was so great that even outdoor periodicals made an effort to stay out of her office's way. She was doing more than just handling correspondence. They were being led across the government by her. On March 31, 2006, everything was altered once more. Dana was elevated by President Bush to the positions of Deputy Press Secretary and Presidential Assistant. This was more than just a prize. It was an indication of the level of trust she had gained. She now dealt directly with the media, answering their most challenging inquiries about topics like hurricane response and energy prices. Congress was debating new legislation while climate change was making headlines. Dana, however, remained composed, ready, and focused. She created history a little more than a year later. Dana Perino was appointed the 26th White House Press Secretary on September 14, 2007. She was only the second female employee. Her journey was unusual. Born in 1972, she grew up in Evanston, Wyoming. Before moving up to the highest echelon of presidential communication, she began her career in local radio, covering the Illinois Capitol. She was commended by President Bush for simplifying difficult subjects for Americans. The moment of her appointment was significant. Up until that point, there had only been one female press secretary and 24 male ones. However, Dana assumed the role amid one of the most trying periods for a press secretary. Since 2003, the Iraq War had continued to drag on. Support for it had fallen precipitously by 2007. The media was combative. They sought clarification on troop surges, losses, and fighting tactics. At the same time, the first indications of the 2008 financial crisis began to reveal that large banks were failing. Dana was under increasing pressure. Her work involved more than simply restating the administration's statements. She had to justify difficult decisions that were frequently controversial. She wasn't treated well by the media. They were occasionally antagonistic and doubtful. Dana acknowledged that it was annoying that she couldn't provide the information that reporters requested, but she maintained her composure. Additionally, she occasionally vented her frustrations in little impish ways behind the podium, out of sight, such as giving a reporter the finger without their noticing, a fact she later revealed in her book. The Globe witnessed an unforgettable moment on December 14, 2008. During his final trip to Iraq, as President George W. Bush was addressing a press conference in Baghdad, suddenly, Muntadar al-Zaidi, an Iraqi journalist, got to his feet. He hurled his shoes directly at President Bush, one after the other. He said, "This is a farewell kiss from the Iraqi people, you dog," as he tossed the first shoe. "This is for the widows and orphans and all those killed in Iraq," was the second shoe that came after. One of the harshest insults in the Arab East is tossing someone a shoe. This wasn't only an assault. The message of protest was loud. Bush avoided getting both shoes. They were only inches away from him. The scene was shown live on television to a global audience. The video went viral and sparked heated discussions regarding the Iraq War. Al-Zaidi was seized, kicked, and hauled away by security personnel. Despite receiving a 1-year prison sentence, he was released. 9 months later, the shoes were well known. Museums eventually acquired copies of these. Others were prompted to protest similarly by the act. Amidst all of this pandemonium, another event occurred that most people were not immediately aware of. Near the front of the room was White House Press Secretary Dana Perino. One of the Secret Service members knocked over a steel boom microphone stand as they hurried in to protect Bush. It turned and struck Perino squarely in the right eye. The agony was sudden and intense. Everyone later observed that she had a black eye and edema. Tearful, Perino had to leave the room. Bush asked the doctor to check on her after noticing that she was injured. Perino, however, was unfazed by the injury. She remained with the team, continued to perform her duties, and even responded to inquiries about what had transpired. Ironically, the Bush team now had a true black eye as a result of all the criticism they had received during the Iraq War. Perino didn't slow down despite the agony. She attended every briefing and function and followed the president's itinerary. Her black eye was noticeable when she returned to Washington. Photographers and reporters noticed it right away. Perino ridiculed the wound by referring to it as her Baghdad shiner. Although many appreciated her bravery, she sought to move on and joked about it. She gave advice on how to remain resilient in the face of adversity. The entire incident served as a reminder to everyone that working in politics, particularly in a volatile environment like Iraq, might present unforeseen risks. The way it was handled in the official record of the time shocked a lot of people. The crowd disruption and turmoil were referred to in the White House transcript. The shoes were not mentioned. Yelling or the ensuing altercation, Bush also attempted to minimize it. "If you want the facts," he joked, he chucked a size 10 shoe. People, however, saw right through it. The truth was recalled by the public and media. That day came to represent the conflicts and difficulties that characterized Bush's presidency. Perino's black eye was back in Washington. Photos of her with the bruise under her eyes went viral quickly, and many saw it as a symbol of the difficult last months of Bush's presidency. After years of criticism about Iraq, the administration now had a real black eye, as commentators noted. Perino herself discussed the injury in interviews, remaining humorous throughout the entire ordeal. Many praised her for remaining composed and steady throughout it all. After leaving the White House in January 2009, Perino's next move was equally impressive. She became a political commentator on Fox News in a matter of months. She started hosting a new show called The Five in 2011. After Glenn Beck left, the show was supposed to step in, but it ended up being a hit. Regular viewers numbered over 2.5 million. The success of the show was aided by Perino's blend of humor and astute observation. She was also a co-anchor of America's Newsroom by 2021, establishing herself as a prominent figure on Fox. Dana Perino was overburdened in 2009. As a former press secretary for the White House, she was frequently asked for assistance by young women. Infinite coffee meetings simply weren't feasible. At that point, she developed a novel idea in collaboration with Jamie Zubak and Dee Martin. It was dubbed Minute Mentoring. The concept was straightforward but amazing. Mentorship through speed dating. Women met prominent female leaders in brief 10-minute rounds rather than in lengthy, drawn-out conversations. The initial occasion in Washington, D.C. had 45 mentees and 15 mentors that year. It was well received.